There's a dance that's in your children. You've given us the rhythm. Now we're stirring up the heavens. Bring the rain.
Amen. Amen. I'm going to take a little bit of risk this morning because I'm going to play a little song, and I'm just interested to see who recognises it. It's actually what we're going to be speaking about this morning. And but when I was a bit unsure, so when I said to Sarah, I played the song to Sarah, and Sarah says, "Well, if you think that's what God wants you to do, then you do it."
I didn't. I said, "Are you joking?"
Yeah. Now it's a great song. Who remembers that song? It's a great song. Actually based on Psalm 137. Psalm 137, and the writer actually wrote it because Israel, the Jews, were actually put into captive into Babylon, and they were yearning, and they really wanted to remember and get back to Jerusalem, and so this song was written. And I've just got a little chart just to make it look a little more spiritual, you know. So I've just got a little chart there. But what happened is the Jews in Jerusalem, they rebelled against King Nebuchadnezzar, and in 600, around about 600 BC, and they were exiled and taken into slavery and transported to Babylon. And they were in Babylon. They were slaves. And I want us to think about one man who was part of that journey, and his name was Nehemiah. And God takes, he was a butler, he was a servant, he was a slave, but God takes, I love him, he's one of my favourite guys in the Bible, because God takes a hold of this guy, this normal guy, who is one of the guys who is weeping by the rivers of Babylon, and he transports him to Jerusalem and to build the walls, to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem. It's a fantastic story, and it's got lots of lessons for us, for each of us, because it's something maybe not physically, but it's what God wants to do for your life. You know that?
Yeah.
God has got a plan for your life. We've heard it over and over again. God's got a plan for your life. And for Nehemiah, it started because he had a steadfast heart. I want us to think about Nehemiah's heart. He had a steadfast heart. Now, a little bit of geography about this kind of exodus that they had from Jerusalem to Babylon. So they were transported there, and the writer speaking of the rivers of Babylon, it could have been, there's a few different rivers, it depends if you're thinking if it's a country of Babylon or the area of Babylon, but one of the rivers is the Euphrates, which starts away up in Turkey, and it goes away down into the southwest into Syria, before turning away to the southeast. It goes right through the heart of modern day Iraq, and then before it kind of empties itself out into Persia. And then the song goes on about this, and the psalm kind of throws up this picture of the Israelites, the Jews, that were sitting there, maybe in a rest, maybe having some day off or whatever they were going to do, but they were sitting by this river, watching the waters going past, and their hearts were just thinking, man, I miss Jerusalem. It's like me with Scotland. Anyway, but he's missing Jerusalem. And on top of that, the guards are sitting there, and they're taunting him. Hey, why don't you sing a little song about Jerusalem? Go and sing a little song. They knew well that the people didn't want to sing about Jerusalem. It's like my son and I, we play PS4 sometimes at night, and we're playing FIFA just now. He beats me every time. And he always taunts me, hey Dad, you're not singing anymore, you're not singing anymore, or you're only singing when you're winning kind of thing. They were taunting them, just to make them feel worse. Because, the captors, they knew the truth. The captors, they knew the truth behind Proverbs 23 verse 7, that as a man thinketh, so he is. And so they knew that if they could get these guys discouraged, if they could break their spirits, it was going to break them. And you know, it's a good lesson for us this morning. Because the world and the devil and everything in this world is out to break your Christian spirit. I believe that. They're out to break you. They're out to constrain you. And if we start to listen to the whispers and the lies that the enemy will kind of try and speak into our lives, we're going to be a defeated people. We're going to be a defeated people. And it becomes a little bit, it becomes your identity. It's a little bit like, you know, this, you sometimes read about hostages being taken, and they're in a hostage situation for so long that they actually start falling in love with their captors. It's called the Stockholm Syndrome. And we can get a spiritual Stockholm Syndrome where we've been defeated for so long that sin takes a hold of our life for so long, it actually becomes our identity. And that happens in our lives. It's happened in my life. For many years, that happened in my life. Just so, and you kind of just have a little bit of comfort because it just helps you to cope, helps you to survive. But I've got something to tell you this morning. God's got something to tell you this morning. He didn't die on the cross for you so you could cope. Yes? He didn't die on the cross for you so you could survive. He died for you. He bled on the cross so that we could live. Not just live, so we could have abundant life. So we could have freedom. So we could have liberty. That's why Jesus died. He's got a plan for you. And for Nehemiah, he didn't have that mindset. And that's why I love him. He didn't have that mindset. He was serving in the palace to the king. He was a slave. A king had defeated him. But he knew in his heart who he was. He was a child of God. He was one of God's chosen people. His home wasn't there. His home was in Jerusalem. And from knowing who he was, he had authority. He didn't serve the king of Babylon. He served the King of Kings. Yes? And for you and for me, it's just so important to know who you are. And if you know who you are, you can have authority. You know, it doesn't matter where you are in life. It doesn't matter what kind of situation you go. And sometimes it's really hard. I know I'm not going to knock things. Sometimes it's really hard. But if you know who you are, if you know who your Father is, if you know whose child you are, you know, you can rise above that situation. And that's what happened. That's what happened to Nehemiah. And it gave him a steadfast heart. Who's going through bad things just now? A lot of troubles, eh? You are a son and a daughter of the King. You can take authority. You have a steadfast heart. Look above your situations. And you know, for Nehemiah, he had that steadfast heart. But the good thing about that steadfast heart is, you know, he could take authority and he could see when there was things that wasn't in line and that was in conflict with what God's order was. And so when Nehemiah, God built on top of that steadfast heart a heart full of compassion and conviction. So he knew who he was, but now he started to know what he was made for. Love it. Made for it. Not made to serve the king, but made for more than that. And so one day, we're told in the book of Nehemiah that as a Jew came back from Jerusalem, and everyone was eager for news from this Jew about Jerusalem. That was their homeland. Yeah? And he came back and he shared, oh man, Jerusalem is in ruins. The people are disgraced. The walls are broken down. The gates are burning. Man, oh, it's just terrible. And when Nehemiah heard that, it broke his heart. It just teared him apart. It devastated him. Now, we could that is a bad thing, but I want to tell you this morning, when God touches your heart and lays on your heart other people and injustice, that is a good thing. That is something we should never take for granted. When God lays in your heart the poor, when God lays in your heart those who are taken captive, when God lays in your heart injustices and anything at all, when God lays in your heart, it's for a reason. And for Nehemiah, God laid in this solid foundation a heart full of compassion and conviction. And you know, compassion and conviction is a powerful force. Because that's a force that Jesus had. That's the thing that it was in Jesus' heart that he saw the world, and it was a dying world, and it was sinful, and it was just being torn apart. And it says that he loved the world. God so loved the world. He was full of compassion. And because he was full of compassion, he says, this is not right. We've got to do something. I'm the only person that can do that. I'm the only Son of God. And it led him to the cross. So a force of compassion and conviction is a powerful thing. It will transform your world, guys. It will rock your world. Your comfortable world, like Nehemiah, all cushy number in the palace, good food, a little bit of scrapes. Didn't have to make bricks, didn't have to do this, didn't have to sweat outside, all that kind of stuff. But it will rock your comfortable world. Did it to me. I remember about 12 years ago, I had a really comfortable world. My wife and myself, we had a really cushy number. Big house, stables, business, things were going really well. And then I remember we went to the Philippines, just on a short-term medical trip. Hey, I'm not medical, didn't have a clue what I was doing. But I went there anyway. And it was a medical trip, and I remember it was actually I was put in the dentist group. And I actually took a Filipino's tooth out. I think it was a wrong tooth, but it didn't matter. But I felt I was doing good, so I was happy, you know. But I remember going up there, and we had a fish business. I was a deep sea fisherman, and we were selling fish in different countries in Europe. And I remember going up. Do you remember this, Neely? Remember, I went up to the top of this hospital called Hope Hospital, Manila, and I was calling this phone, buying, selling fish, thinking, man, this is life. And I looked over at the slums. I had never seen poverty like that in my life. It rocked my world. God spoke to me. I never say that lightly. I hear people say that a lot of times. I can never say it, but I felt that God spoke to me. Teach me to number your days and use them wisely. It changed my world. Conviction and compassion. I've got to do something. My cozy world, my comfortable world was just rocked. And God can do that for you. So you never take, if you have a nudge, if you have a conviction, if you have compassion in your life, you thank God. You thank God for that. And so for God, you know, He built a steadfast heart in Nehemiah's life. It is so important to know who you are. And then on top of that, he gave Nehemiah a compassionate and a heart full of conviction. And then on top of that, again, it was just like layer upon layer, he gave Nehemiah a heart of expectation. And I love this. A heart of expectation. You see, when Israel were first exiled, God gave them a prophecy through this guy called Jeremiah. And it's in Jeremiah 29 verse 10. Very, very well-known verses. God says to them, He says, when 70 years are completed in Babylon, I'm going to come for you and fulfill my good promise and bring you back to this place. God had promised them that He would take them back to Jerusalem. Are you with me? And then the second part of that promise that he gave them to keep their hope alive was, for I know that, we've heard it this morning, when I heard it my heart jumped. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you, not to harm you. Plans to give you a hope and a future. And so for Nehemiah, he knew that God had taken care of, or was partially fulfilling the first part of the prophecy. 70 years had passed. The first 50,000 Jews had returned to Jerusalem. So it was, God was on the move. And I guess it would be easy for Nehemiah to think, well, job's done, God's kind of got it all sorted, well, it's as good as it's going to get. But God had given Nehemiah a heart of expectation, a heart of more, a heart of, man, there must be more than this. See, it'd been easy for Nehemiah to kind of forget the second part of that promise, yeah? That God had got a plan for Israel. Yeah. That God had got a good plan. That God was going to make them prosper. That no harm was going to come over them. They were going to have hope and a future. It'd been easy for him to kind of forget that and kind of gloss it over. Well, God's kind of keeps his promises. But no, just some of the promises, yeah? Yeah? No. But he didn't do that, did he? Because it wasn't happening. Here was God's city that he had promised. They were getting attacked by bandits or robbers. They were being defeated. They were being humiliated. They were getting all manner of harm was on their life. And so Nehemiah had this heart of expectation. There has to be more, God. You haven't kept fully your word yet. And so I love it. He goes into prayer. It says he prayed for almost 4 months between hearing the message from Jerusalem to him actually going to see the king of Babylon to say, we're going to do something. Can I go back to Jerusalem? It was actually about 4 months. So he spent a long time of prayer. It really kind of ate him up. And so but one of the prayers he gives us, he reminds God his promise. He says, hey God, you said, if you return to me, and if you obey my commands, and even if you're exiled to the ends of the earth, you're going to gather me back to the place that dwells with your name, Jerusalem. He reminds God of that promise. And as I was reading this, I felt the Lord say, we need to remind all of us here, the challenge for you and me is not to just accept part of a promise. Not just accept part or a little bit of God's promise. It's been easy for us to say, well, when we become a Christian, if we confess our sins, God's going to be faithful and just to forgive our sins. Hey, job's done, God, that's good enough for me. But He gives you more. He says, I've got a plan for you. It's a good plan. It's a plan to prosper you. Maybe not financially, it doesn't matter. Financial prosperity, that's the lowest kind of. Seriously. Health, family, vision, friends, passion, all that kind of stuff, far more important than financial wealth. But God's got a plan for you to prosper you guys. Do you believe that this morning? Yeah. He's got a plan for you. He's got a plan not just to prosper you, but not to harm you. And so you maybe get through stuff in your life just now and thinking, man, my life is just rubbish. I'm getting all these kind of stuff. You stand in every promise of God. You remind God, you promised me. Yeah. You promised me that you wouldn't harm me. I'm your child. I'm a son of God. I'm a daughter of God. You said that you'd prosper me. You said you wouldn't harm me. You said you had all these stuff in front of me. So don't settle for just one part of God's promise. You settle for all of God's promises in all of the Bible because they're given to you. They're given to you. And when God promises something, He always keeps His word. A steadfast heart. A heart full of compassion and conviction. A heart full of expectation. But you know the thing I like most about Nehemiah? He had a heart just like you and me. He was just normal. He wasn't like superstar Nehemiah. He wasn't like NehemiahMinistry.com. Yeah? He was just a butler. He was a working guy like you guys. But for Tiva, he's 3 hours a week apparently. Shame on you. Yeah. So, apart from Tiva, Nehemiah was like the rest of us. Yeah? Man, that was a bad one. Eh? Yeah. Anyway, where we at? Yeah. So he had a heart like you and me. And, so as I've been reading this story of Nehemiah, which is found in, about this restoration of Jerusalem, it's actually found in the books of Ezra and Nehemiah. Now it's interesting, I don't know why, but up to the 3rd century, our Christian Bible, Ezra and Nehemiah, it was just one book. Book Ezra. But for some reason it was split in two, I don't know why. But if you go to the Hebrew Bible, it's still one Bible. It's still one book. And as I was thinking about that, Ezra is very much focused on the Word of God, about restoring the promise of the Word of God and rebuilding the temple. Where Nehemiah very much is focused on rebuilding the walls, the more practical stuff. And as I was thinking about this, I just felt the Lord say to me, man, you need both in your life. You need to be able to preach the Word and to share the gospel, but you also need to help the poor and help the sick. And every time there's a massive move of God, every time God is moving, both things happen. The Word is preached, the Bible becomes central. The Word of God, but also the poor help, social injustice, and we need both. Sometimes it's so easy for us to think, sometimes it's so easy to think, well, if I preach on a Sunday, or if I do something in ministry, or if I pray for someone, that's a little bit, God sees that, so that's very spiritual. But if I help someone on a Monday, or if I do something practical, God doesn't see that. It's absolute nonsense, guys, isn't it? It's absolute nonsense. We need both. In fact, James in James 2:15 says, hey, if you see a brother that doesn't have clothes and you just say to him, hey, Lord bless you, I'll pray for you. He says, your faith's useless. It's like, I won't say her name, but I know this elderly woman, and there's two guys came from her church to visit her, and it was a nice pastoral visit. And she says, is there anything we could do for you? And he says, well, yeah, I think we need our grass cut. I need my grass cut. And they says, well, okay, we'll pray for that. And she's about 90 odd, And then she says, well, I can actually pray for it myself. I just need my grass cut. And so you can see someone that's cold. You can see someone that's hungry. And you can say, hey, Lord bless you. The Lord, man, it doesn't cut it, does it? Such a faith. So you need both of that in your life. And sometimes, if we're honest, sometimes we have a tendency for one or the other. Sometimes we have a tendency to preach the Word. Sometimes we have a tendency to do more practical stuff. Hey, if I'm honest, I'm probably more practical stuff, as you probably notice. Yeah? So more practical. Nehemiah was like that. He was more practical. And what I kind of noticed about Nehemiah is that 4 times in the book of Nehemiah, he cries, God, remember me. God, remember me. See, I'm doing this thing. I'm building this wall. I'm doing this practical thing. 4 times he keeps on crying, remember me. Ezra, whose focus was on restoring the temple and the Bible, I never read that he says, God, remember me. And the thought that came out of my mind is that when we're doing more practical things, sometimes we think God doesn't see that. And we think, God, you've just got to remember me. And I love that because it shows that Nehemiah was a very, very, he's a little bit of insecurity. He was normal. He was like you and me. And that was a real encouragement to me. Because, hey, we all have wobbles, don't we? We all have good days and bad days in our Christian life, don't we? Or is it just me? I'm just looking to see who's not noting. Okay. We all have wobbles. And this was Nehemiah's wobble. I had a wobble this week. Who wants to hear about it? Yeah, everyone's nodding now, right? Want to hear? Yeah. So on Wednesday, remember Simon, is it Fowler? Foster. Yeah. Who liked him? He was a great guy, yeah? And so he was doing some training up in Elam HQ, Heaven, I think they call it. And so they went up to Elam HQ, and they were doing a little training called, I think it was Walking in the Miraculous or Ministering the Miraculous. And so we went up there, Ross, Tiva was hanging out with the big guys. I thought, man, yeah, this is as good as it gets. And we went up there, and man, it was fantastic teaching. I loved it. I came back, I felt so much full of love for the Lord. And then the next day we had actually booked a night away in a hotel. I thought, this life can't get better than this. And that morning Amazon did a delivery of new trekking shoes. And so I got this new trekking shoes, and I was kind of dressed up like a boy band kind of guy. And we're going away on holiday, and I went out, we have a dog, and I went out into the garden, we were going to wait towards the car, and I took 3 steps out in the garden. Could you believe it? I stood in dog's poop. I thought, man, I was mad. Trekking shoes, every little. With flat shoes. The next half an hour, I'm thinking I'm going to clean my shit. I know it's not very preachy, but I'm going to share it anyway. And the next half an hour, and I was fuming. I was mad at this dog. I was mad at the world. I know you guys don't, you kind of float through life and you don't stand in that stuff, but I stood in this. I was mad. I was getting madder actually. I'm actually getting mad now. And I came into the house after half an hour, and I said to Newman, what am I going to do with that dog? He's like, pooped over the garden, I've stood in it. My wife says, take a chill pill. Just chill out. I said, what am I going to do with that dog? And my wife says, well, in your mood, if there's a choice between the dog and you, I'm keeping the dog. And I knew it. And I just kind of thought, man, I just had a little wobble, half an hour wobble. We all have wobbles. And so the thought came to my mind, and that sense of spiritual thought, Wednesday you could be walking in the miraculous. Thursday you could be walking in something else. Yeah, we've all been there. Thank God for Friday. Yes. And that was Nehemiah. He had lots of little wobbles. Lord, you don't see what I'm doing. He had a steadfast heart. He knew who he was. Someone had to remind him maybe of, man, you're a child of the King. You're a Jew. One of God's chosen people. He had this conviction sorry, can the band come up, please? He had this conviction and full of conviction and compassion. Man, I've got to do something. I've got to restore the walls of Jerusalem. The people are there. They're suffering. They're doing all this kind of stuff. It's not right. Injustice. He had a heart full of expectation. There must be more, God. You promised that you would have a plan, a good plan for that people. But he had a human heart as well. I love that about him. Yeah? Sometimes he had wobbles. Sometimes he had insecurities. And so, that's what I wanted to share with you this morning about Nehemiah. What a great guy, yeah? Great life lessons. And that's my prayer for you this morning. So, after the service, we're going to have a prayer team. You go and speak to people. You get prayed for. That if you don't know who you belong to, that God, you would have a fresh revelation this morning that God loves you, that you're a child, a God, you're a son or daughter of the King. That if you think, no, this is it, I'm just drifting through life now, that you're comfortable, that God would come and just rock my world. He would take you out of that comfort zone. He would fill you with a conviction and a compassion for other people. Give you the heart of Jesus. That if you're in times of trouble, if you're kind of thinking, man, yeah, God gives me promises, but I need more, that you claim every promise that God has given you. You don't stand in one part of the promise, you don't take one promise, you take every promise. That God has got a plan for your life. It's a good plan, not to harm you. And for me, and for you, most of you guys, if you've had a wobble this week, it's not the end, It's not the end. God's got a purpose for you. You confess your sins. You ask God to restore you. You keep on pushing on. You know, the devil would come, the world would come, yourself will come and condemn you and say, man, I've messed up. That's the end. We've all been there, guys. And it's not the end. It's just a little wobble. Thank God for Fridays. Thank God for today. Thank God for this morning. Amen.
When the weight of life begins to fall, on the name of Jesus I will call.
There's a dance that's in your children. You've given us the rhythm. Now we're stirring up the head.